Hey y'all, it's Julius from Panther Power Clean. Today I'm going to show you how I pressure wash my driveway. So there's plenty of steps to it. I'm going to quickly go through all of them and show you guys how I clean the driveway. So first let's start off with the safety. Safety is pretty important, safety number one. So safety, it really comes down to making sure you have the proper gear. So that's talking about gloves, boots, glasses, right? These ones. Make sure they're also we should say ultraviolet, UV protected, right? So you definitely don't want the sunburns, right? Especially out here in Florida. Then also, since I have a gasoline engine, we have a fire extinguisher right here, so you can see right there, that little red tube. And then we also have first aid kit in case we have a pretty high pressure washer, 4,200 psi, and so you can get some pretty bad injuries. And it's important that you make sure that the people stay safe, right? And so that pretty much handles all the safety. We have some traffic cones, so you saw back there. Where my thumb is pointing, just a little in the corner right there. Yeah, that explains safety. So now I'll show you how we set up the hoses, or at least Panther Power Clean, how we set it up. But I do the same thing for my driveway as well. So I'll show you right here. This right here, right there, is the high pressure line for the pressure washing gun, the surface cleaner, right? The big stuff, right? The big guns. This thing is 200 foot, so you get plenty of distance, plenty of reach. Definitely a luxury. You're not gonna have this in your garage probably, just by chance. So definitely, it's definitely very useful. I think it's worth the money, but not exactly most convenient for most people, especially since you need a big reel for that. It's pretty heavy. Uh, and then also down here, right below, you see this 100-foot orange hose. That is for the water. So you plug that into a spigot and get the water, right? Get all that water going into the pressure washer. Right here is a soap tank. We'll just unscrew the cap that's right there, put in the siphon, put it down in there, and we're to get the soap running in through the pressure washing gun. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up for all the hoses. And so right now I'll show you how I take out the gun and set up that. Right over here, we have all our equipment set up. So you can see right here, surface cleaner is bungee corded to the roof of the van. And then we also have the gun right over here. I'm having trouble with the pointing and everything. But right over here is the pressure washing gun. You see bungee corded. I'll get that out right here for you guys to see. So I'll do that right now. Very simple. Simply take it out. You have a nice little tube so the gun can reach through. But this thing has no nozzle on right now. We always make sure to put all the nozzles in the correct place before, after we leave a job. So just for organization purposes. But when you start off on the driveway, at least I do, I always make sure to put on the soap nozzle. You could do a rinse, but usually you really, the only thing you need the rinse for is if you have like insane amount of debris that it's not like you just pressure wash it away, like maybe like you got mulch just like spilled, like a whole wagon of mulch just spilled onto the driveway, or maybe you got like a huge palm tree or trees plural that fell onto the driveway, then you're in a bit of trouble. And I mean, I don't know if rinsing helps you solve that problem, but you definitely need to clear that debris before you can get to pressure washing. But once most of the driveways, right, the dirt's on a more molecular level, so you're not going to get that much problems, which is why I always start off with the soaping immediately, straight from the go. Just loosen up all that dirt, as I said, and get the driveway ready to pressure wash. So here I got all my nozzles on the pressure washing engine. You see? So you got black, white, green, yellow, and red. Red for me is very dangerous because it's 4,200 psi. You don't want to mess around with that. So I always default to using the black nozzle for soap. I'm pretty sure it's the same for all the engines, but you can double check me that in the comments. But I think So black soap nozzle, right, to start, and then when you get to real pressure washing, I use a surface cleaner, but if you're gonna use a gun, I recommend using a white nozzle if it's a high pressure engine. The lower you go, like 2000 range, low 2000s, you can use black turbo, right? That's it's a 0 degree that rotates really fast. It's similar to how a surface cleaner works, right? But it's a nozzle you can put on. So I recommend that if you have a low pressure engine where you're not going to have that much danger with hitting the concrete at really high pressure, right? Because the problem with me is if I use the red nozzle, I'm going to be damaging the concrete. That's not good, right? Then pressure washing too much, right? So definitely don't want to do that. So put on the black nozzle, get the soap line in, and then you have to start the engine. My engine's a bit different. I mean, everyone's engine is different, so starting is going to be unique for everyone. But some little safety tips: always make sure that when you start the engine, the water is running. So you have to make sure you're pulling on the trigger of the gun. So you can see right here. Whoops, almost smacked the engine. But right here, always make sure you're holding on that when you're starting the engine. If you're solo, you're probably going to want to, this is a bit crazy, but you're going to want to one-hand the engine pull, or if you have a start, you're really fancy and lucky, but most people have the engine pull. So you got to pull that lever, and then also have one hand that's shooting on the gun. That's going to help you avoid the engine just like stopping all of a sudden, right? Problem is if you don't pull on this while you start it, you might get away with it and it might just work fine. But most cases, especially for me, it doesn't have a good time starting up and it just immediately fails. Usually because the engines, if you're not having the water running, it's almost like the engine's off while you have the engine on. You know, it's very confusing, but it's a bad case for this engine to be in, and so you definitely don't want that for your machine. It's not good for the health for the engine. And so that is that. And then you'll see here, once I finish up the soaping process, by the way, soaping, very simple, very simple. There's a Cybertruck, by the way, but don't mind that in the background. But so soaping, you literally just want to spray everywhere in the driveway, except all the grass, right? Very simple. Definitely don't spray dogs or cats or humans or birds or any wildlife unless it's an ant or cockroach. Definitely spray those. You're doing us a favor. Thank you. And mosquitoes. Yeah, don't forget those. Yeah, so definitely get those when you're soaping. And when you're done, usually you're gonna, if you're using an electric engine, you don't have to worry. You can just shut off the water and then switch between. If you have a surface cleaner, you can switch to your surface cleaner. Otherwise, you can switch the nozzles on the pressure washing gun. For me, I have a gas engine, so typically how you would go about switching the nozzle or the tool is you would switch off the engine. But for me, I have a little more fancier thing on this, or it's not on the gun, but on the hose back here. See, I have this little silver stainless steel thing. You might be wondering what this is. This is a ball valve. So this ball valve, you switch this valve into a forward-facing position. See, that is going to spill all the water into the van. So I have it closed for now, right? But when I take it out and I need to switch a tool really quickly, right? I basically, this is like my water shut off, right? And so anytime I want water to stop coming out, shut it off, disconnect from my gun, and plug it into the surface cleaner. You would be surprised how much time that saves versus having to start out or stop the engine and then start it again, and then it gets all messy, and it's not good to always turn off and on the engine like there's a light bulb switch or something, right? It's not good. But so I'm gonna cut to some footage of you guys, or not of you guys, but I'm gonna show you guys how I use a surface cleaner to pressure wash the area for my driveway, and then I'll show you afterwards the rinsing process. So let's get to that. Hey y'all. So I got the surface cleaner here. It's all out and unbungee corded. So first rule of thumb when you're using the surface cleaner, you're gonna want to make sure, first of all, but before you even buy the surface cleaner, make sure it's small enough. And that's a weird thing to say, but the problem is when you go to a really big surface cleaner size, like let's say you have a 1 gallon per minute pressure washer, right? gas or electric, right? It applies to everything. If you have a 1 gallon per minute pressure washer and you buy like a 30-inch surface cleaner disc, you would assume that it would be really strong and it would just power through and you could like run across the driveway and finish it in 5 seconds, but that is not how it works, right? Physics works a bit differently. And so problem you run into is you're spreading out the water too thin. There's not enough water coming in, right? Only 1 gallon per minute, and you're spreading it across 30 inches square foot, or not square foot, 30 inches, right? Diameter. But you run into spreading your resources too thin, and so you don't get a good result. You have to end up going really, really slow, and it sucks. And it's like, why even go to this size if it's like I have to tiptoe across the whole driveway for like 2 hours, right? It doesn't make sense, right? And so what you want to make sure is the rule of thumb is for each gallon per minute you have on your machine, 4 inches of the surface cleaning diameter. And so that means if you have a 2 gallon per minute pressure washer, make sure you have they don't really sell this, but if you have 2 gallons per minute pressure washer, 8-inch surface cleaner. And that's really small, which is why you want to go to a high gallon per minute pressure washer. So I have a 4, I don't see it immediately. I think it's 4.4, maybe 4.0, but I'll assume 4 gallons per minute gas pressure washer. So I should have a 16-inch surface cleaner. I have a 20-inch, so there's some room to like play around, but that is the general rule of thumb, is that you want to get 1 gallon per minute for each 4 inches. And so that's your shopping guide. So now that you have your surface cleaning disc right, and you have it correct, what you can do here is take it, right? I recommend these type of surface cleaners, the ones with the handle and the whole thing here, just because, especially when you use really high pressure engines, there's a lot of recoil on that thing, you know? And so it definitely helps to have both handles, and you can get a good grip on it. It's very easy to push around and move, and very easy to go around the whole driveway like that, right? But for the actual cleaning, when it comes to actual cleaning, let me show you right here. So you pick it up. Always make sure your engine's running, right? I mean, you'll be surprised people just play around with the pressure washer and it's not even running. But make sure it's running. Grab that surface cleaning. You generally, there's a lot of ways to do this. But for like simple square driveway, you know, it always depends. You could have like a driveway that has like a little roundabout or something like that, like half semicircle or something. Yeah, I've seen a lot of driveways, right? But for a simple square driveway or rectangle or whatever you want to call it, you can simply go. I wouldn't make it too complex and go like zigzag or something. You can go really any way you want, but I recommend just going from one side to the other, and then, you know, shifting a little bit to the left or right, and then going to the next one. Do several strips across, you know. The point is you want to make sure you're going over the driveway, the whole area, right? You want to cover every single square foot, and so you don't want to miss anything. Make sure you don't overlap too much, because then you're going pretty slow. I mean, if you're doing it at home, you know, maybe you're content with going slow and steady, but for me, I like to do things fast. I don't like to pressure wash forever, especially out here in Florida. It gets really hot, and so it's not very pleasant conditions. But if it's okay with you, then you can simply go very slow and give yourself a little room to overlap and everything. But I personally recommend that you give yourself as little overlap as possible, just to help speed up things and make it quicker. But definitely do not overlap, if that makes sense. Always make sure you have some overlap, because then you run into the problem of actually having to spend more time because you have to redo a certain area because you had a strip or something, right? Where it was just like a strip of dirt that you missed just barely by a very little inch, and it's like this small, and you know, you just barely forgot. That's why you always give yourself just a bit of overlap, so that way you can give yourself some insurance, right? Another thing is also, and this applies to me because I have a pretty oversized surface cleaner, if that makes sense. I have 20 inches for 4 gallons per minute, which is not apply. Like, I should ideally have 5 gallons per minute machine, but I have 4 gallons per minute, and that's because I mean I'm stupid, right? We all make mistakes, but in that case, right? And so my resources are very marginally spread thin, and so that means I have to go slower than I really should, and that is a big problem with most people. If you didn't immediately you do the rule of thumb of 1 to 4, right? 1 gallon per minute for each 4 inches. If you didn't follow that rule immediately, you just have a surface cleaning this, you're not in trouble, right? But it does mean you have to go slower. So how slow should you go? Ideally, what I do is I like to take 3 seconds for each step I do. So I'll literally show you right here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Right? You want to play it really slow, and the reason why you want to play it really slow is that you really want to give yourself a lot of chance to make sure that thing is clean. You want to make sure that driveway is clean. The problem with going a little too fast, especially if it's inconsistent, the problem is not so much that you're going too fast. The problem is you might be inconsistent with the speed. If you're inconsistent with the speed, then you run into the issue of having the stripes on the driveway, because then you'll have dirt that is to explain it really simply, right? If you go on, say, like the left side of the driveway really fast, and you go on the right side of the driveway really slow, the problem is on the left side it's going to be slightly more dirty because you didn't go at the ideal speed, and then on the right side it's going to be a little cleaner. But how do you balance that out, right? And what if, just by chance, that both sides are too fast, right? The right side was a bit quicker, but it wasn't slow enough. Or it was a bit slower, but it wasn't slow enough still. Then you run into a big issue where now you're going to have to redo the whole entire thing. So that means pressure washing your entire driveway 3 times. And that's not a good thing, right? You definitely don't want to do that. And so what I recommend is that 3-second step rule is very useful. So now that you got that pressure washer, you got the surface cleaner, and you got that whole thing pressure washed, now you got to get all that dirt off the driveway. So I'm going to show you how. I'm going to get this surface cleaner packed up, and I'm going to show you guys how I rinse the driveway. Alright guys, so I'm going to try this in another perspective, just so you guys can see the whole picture. But you can see here, I got my gun right here. If you look a little closer, you'll see it's a white nozzle I got on here. Again, it's because I have a high pressure machine, but you generally do want to play it safe. If you have a low pressure machine, you're not sure which nozzle to pick, I recommend playing on the safe side, you know. Pick a low pressure nozzle, one that you feel like would be low pressure. And if it's not low enough, then up the notch a little bit, right? You definitely don't want to go too overboard and then like chop someone's leg off and then be like, oh well, it's too much. Like probably should have started lower. So that's my advice. But so once you start the rinsing step, make sure you have good enough pressure. Generally, just enough to push water, right? Push the dirt off the driveway, right? Nothing too crazy. You're not gonna be. Actually, I take that back. You do want to be able to at least go in close enough and be able to pressure wash a bit, because what you are gonna do during this step is fixing up any mistakes that you have made, or may have made with the surface cleaner. Not sure if you guys did, but you know, I would assume so. But so generally, like if you come over here to the sides or the edges of the driveway, generally the surface cleaner, unless you run it on the grass for some reason, like a lawnmower, it probably doesn't hit the edges as much. And so that's what you want to do in this rinsing step is, along with getting all the water drained, you also want to make sure that you hit the edges with the pressure washing gun. So just demonstrate really quick. Go in closely. Generally, you could try this from different angles because it depends on the environment. But generally, you don't want to aim it like you don't want to point it like this, because then you're going to be spraying directly at the grass and it's going to go all dirty. So maybe you could go a little more like this or a little more like this. But you definitely want to adapt to conditions and be able to see which way is going to be the least dirtiest, right? There's always going to be some spray and whatever, and that's just part of the job. But yeah, that's how it is. But now for actually rinsing. Now that you've fixed up all the mistakes that you may have made, let's get to the actual rinsing. So how do you rinse your driveway, you may ask? So what I do is I like to start from the very top. That way all the water flows down, right, to the driveway. Onto the road. And so that means I have to start all the way where the garages are. And so, and the thing is, that pretty much completes the pressure washing. You definitely want to pack up all your gear. So let me just show you how I do that. So go over here. Always make sure before you do anything like disconnect nozzles or switch tools or like take off the tools off the hoses or anything, make sure your engine's off. You know, turn off the engine, turn off the power, whatever you're using, turn it off, because you don't want to run into a problem where you like think it's off because you're not running the water, and then you take off the trigger or you take off the nozzle, and then let's say your pinky is on the trigger, or like your friend's holding the gun and he's like, oh look, a spider on my hand, oh no, let's press the trigger. Then you blow off your hand, and then now you have no hand, right? So you don't want to end up in that accident. And so what I recommend is always turning off the equipment. Then you can take off the nozzle, and then you can put away your equipment, you can put away your gun, put away the surface cleaner, put away the hoses, reel it up, or wrap it up, or whatever you got. But definitely put away everything. That is what I do for pressure washing my driveway. If you guys like the video, definitely make sure to leave a thumbs up. Give us a comment, because this is our first time doing anything like this. So definitely give us some feedback in the comments, and definitely subscribe if you like to see more content. We'll be uploading pretty frequently from now on, and so we'll be excited to show you guys all the stuff we got for pressure washing. So see you guys. It's Julius from Paint to Power Clean. Nice seeing y'all.